Hello, my name is Owen Darbishire and I'm a Professor of Negotiations at Oxford University. What I'd like to have a look at today is the challenging issue of who should make the first offer and when should it be made. One of the things that we know is that about 80% of people express the view that they would rather the other party made that first offer. And why is that? A significant part of the reason is a fear of losing out, a lack of confidence. Negotiations are characterized by uncertainty and ambiguity. What would happen then if you made an offer that was significantly below the value that the other party would accept? Famous stories such as Thomas Edison in his negotiations with Western Union, where he received dramatically more than he was going to ask for, illustrate this, but also serve to tempt people to think that that is the approach that they ought to adopt. However, we know from a lot of very robust research that that would be a mistake. The first offer serves as an anchor in the negotiation. And in doing so, it serves to impact the process that the negotiation takes, the dynamics, and the final outcome. And the first offer allows a party to capture a greater share of the final value than they would do otherwise. So what guidance does that give us? Well, first offers can be an important factor. How should you make them? The first thing you might want to do is to be clear on what your aspirations are, but to set those aspirations at the high end of what is achievable. Second, you want to think about what justifications you can put forward. You need to have a justification for the initial ask. Third is to note that a more precise anchor can have a powerful impact. So, for example, saying 5,000 euros is less powerful than 5,127 euros. Precision matters, but don't overdo it. A fourth approach would be to think about a range. So instead of saying 5,100 euros, what happens if you said between 5,100 and 5,300 euros? Now, it might think that in the first instance, you're giving away value because you've given a range. But if that lower end of the range that you just suggested is actually what your aspiration is, what you've in fact done is to indicate a degree of reasonableness to the other party. And we know that the counteroffer that they give then is generally more favorable to you. So these suggest that anchoring is something that you should engage in. But in fact, we need to be a little bit more cautious than that, because there are conditions under which you don't want to go into the negotiation with an anchor as your early move. Two important dimensions of this are, firstly, what happens if you don't know what the other party is willing to accept? In other words, when you go into the negotiation, you've done your preparation, but there is still lots of uncertainty and ambiguity left. You need to approach the negotiation as a learning opportunity. You need to be asking questions to discover the information that is relevant to establish what settlement is appropriate. A second example of where you've got to be cautious was when you're in a multi-issue negotiation where there is a prospect of creating value. That value comes through engaging in what we call smart trades, giving away something of low value to you, which is of high value to the other side. But in order to do that, you've got to understand the relative preferences that the other party has for the different items that you are discussing. In other words, you can do preparation before the negotiation, but fundamentally the negotiation is an important learning opportunity. So if you go in and put an early anchor on the table, what you do is you change the dynamic of the negotiation so that it is then focused around the anchor, and you undermine the opportunity to learn from the other side and to create more value for both of you. So be cautious about setting that first anchor under these conditions where learning is important. However, don't allow the other side to anchor. Make sure that for both parties, the focus is on learning and not at trying to reach too early a conclusion to the negotiation.